Hey everyone, I'm here in Marietta, Georgia, and we're going to visit a few locations today relating to a pretty terrible person, and that is Julia Lynn Turner, who's also known as the Antifreeze killer. We'll go over the specifics of what she did and who she did it to, but long story short, Julia Lynn Turner poisoned her husband, who was a police officer, with antifreeze, and her boyfriend, who was a firefighter in Cumming, Georgia, with antifreeze. Now, there's an overlap of her relationship with both men, whom neither knew about, but both men had the same symptoms of basically having a terrible stomach ache, flu-like symptoms, going to the doctor, being treated for that, and then the next day they were dead. It wasn't until her boyfriend's death, 6 years after her husband's death, would she be put on trial for the murder of both men. So we're going to take a look at her grave, her late husband's grave, Glenn Turner, and the location at which her boyfriend, Randy Thompson, was found dead. Randy's in Forsyth County, so we'll check that out last. We'll go to that apartment complex and look at the apartment that he was found dead in. So first we're going to take a look at the grave of Julia Lynn Turner. Follow me. Julia is buried at the Holly Springs Cemetery in Marietta, Georgia. And once you look up the location of the cemetery, it'll take you to this far one over here across the road. That's where my car is parked on down that way. But her grave is actually going to be located on the other side. This is where some of the newer burials are located. So we're going to head on over and take a look at her grave. It's kind of interesting at the amount of marks that are on her grave, possibly because of angry family members or just vandals. Obviously, people who want to vandalize a cemetery, this is a person that you might not get in too much trouble by vandalizing their headstone, because she was a pretty terrible woman. At face value, not taking into account what she had possibly gone through in her childhood, but nonetheless still pretty terrible person. Alright, so next we're going to go over to the grave of Glenn Turner, who's buried in a separate cemetery, but still in Marietta, Georgia. And we're going to go over some of the details about his death, and as well as the death of Randy Thompson. Now, it wasn't until Randy Thompson's death was Lynn Turner convicted for the death of both men, and this was 6 years apart. So let's go take a look at the grave of Glenn Turner. Alright, and here we are at the Cheatham Hills Memorial Park, about 10 miles away from the resting place of Lynn Turner. This is where Glenn Turner's grave is located. Now, Glenn was a police officer that met Lynn while she was a 911 dispatcher. Eventually they did get married, like I was saying earlier, and they almost immediately had issues within their relationship. Leading up to his death, Lynn began an affair with a Forsyth County firefighter, Randy Thompson. He's from Warner Robins, That's also where his grave is located. It's a few hours away. Glenn was unaware of his wife's affair, and by 1995 he began to start his plans for moving out and filing for a divorce. Unfortunately, he didn't go through with this, and he began to fall ill and went to the emergency room on March 2nd, 1995. He was complaining of flu-like symptoms, and he was treated there, and when he felt better, he went home. The next day, he was found dead when Lynn came home. Glenn's cause of death was ruled natural causes due to an irregular heartbeat. After Glenn's death, Lynn moved in with Randy Thompson and collected $153,000 from her late husband's death and pension. She used this money to buy a house with Randy. They had a son and a daughter together. By 2000, Randy and Lynn were having problems in their relationship. This caused Randy to move out on January 22nd, 2001. Randy Thompson, at the age of 32, was found dead in his apartment. Thompson had reported feeling ill with flu-like symptoms and had gone to the emergency room, complaining of a stomach ache and constant vomiting. He was treated and released on January 21st. Lynn made him some Jell-O, and by the next day he was dead. She only collected $36,000 in her boyfriend's death due to his $200,000 insurance policy lapsing. Thompson reported cause of death was an irregular heartbeat, the same cause of death as Lynn's previous husband. Shortly after Randy Thompson's death, police reopened the case of Lynn Turner's death after finding that both men died under nearly the same circumstances. Suspecting something sinister, Lynn Turner's mother read Randy Thompson's obituary and called a named relative, saying she lost her son very mysteriously as well, and stated that her son and Randy had a common connection to Lynn Turner. Blood tests later found out that ethylene glycol, which is also known as antifreeze, was found in Thompson's system. Police discovered that Lynn had visited an animal shelter asking about how to put down a stray animal and what poison to use. Lynn Turner's body was exhumed, and ethylene glycol was also found in his kidneys. Crime scene photos from Lynn Turner's death contain a photograph of the garage where the antifreeze was visible. 10 months after Randy Thompson's death, Lynn was arrested for Glenn's murder. She was tried for Lynn Turner's murder in 2004 and was found guilty. She went to trial in 2007 for the murder of Randy Thompson, ultimately being convicted. The state contended that she poisoned both men by placing the antifreeze in their food, as it is odorless with a sweet taste. She faced the death penalty for the murder of Randy Thompson, but was instead sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. According to the Georgia Department of Corrections website, Turner was serving her sentence at the Metro State Prison. Fortunately, Turner was found dead in prison on August 30th, 2010. Her death was ruled a suicide. Essentially, Lynn Turner had stored up a bunch of blood pressure medication and taken it all at once. And this caused her ultimate death. Alright, so here at the Cheatham Hills Memorial Park, where Lynn Turner's grave is located, I'm having a very hard time finding it. It is a very large cemetery, and this cemetery is one of those cemeteries where basically every grave is flat. This makes it extremely hard to find someone's grave, but if anyone does know where his grave is located, please leave a comment in the comment section, even if it's the general area, what's visible from his grave. There's a couple of larger memorials. There's also a mausoleum here, just in reference to that. But next, we're going to head over to Forsyth County, which I do know exactly where it's at. That's the county that I currently live in, and I drive past this apartment complex fairly often. So we're gonna go take a look at that. So follow me. And right here's the site of where Randy Thompson was found dead. His apartment is right off Castleberry Road in Cumming, Georgia. Now, I don't recommend coming by this place and going up to the door because people still live here, and I highly doubt anyone was told that someone was murdered in this house, let alone to a pretty infamous murder. It's only stated on, I believe, Randy's autopsy report, the location of his apartment. You can see that in an episode of, I believe, Snapped, where they vaguely show the address and apartment number. But Randy is going to be it's listed as D5, so it's going to be right here where Randy was found dead. It's pretty interesting, and like I said, no one in this apartment complex, unless they were here when it happened, knows what went on in that apartment. It's not going to sell very well. People aren't going to rent this apartment out knowing that someone was murdered in one of those rooms. All right. Well, I guess you could consider her a serial killer. FBI.gov does say that the murder of 2 people over an expanded time frame does constitute a serial killer. Some people will say it's at least 3 people, but a pretty terrible person. This is not someone that gets covered very often. You look her up on YouTube, you're gonna find maybe the Snapped episode or something on Dateline, but as far as someone else creating something on her, it's not done quite often. She was super money hungry and loved power and would take people's lives just so she could have nice things. Not a very good person, if you ask me, but besides the fact, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to see the other places that I've been to, click the link in the description and it'll take you to an interactive map. Please, if there's any place you want to see me visit, leave a comment in the comment section and I'll try my best to get to it. But for now, thanks for watching, everyone.